Hey, this is Saxon from the Banking on Community podcast. Thanks for listening. This episode is one of a live series we recorded at CSI's yearly conference, CX25. Tara and I spoke with Jason Dorsey from the Center for Generational Kinetics. If you're not familiar, Jason is a true expert in generational trends. He's led over 150 research studies, written books, and appeared on TV shows like 60 Minutes and The Today Show. Trust me, this guy knows his stuff. We thought it'd be interesting to pick his brain about how differences in generations are affecting the banking industry. So that could be your customer base or even your employees. One little disclaimer, this was our first time recording these live on site and we did have some technical difficulties. If it seems like the audio or the conversation skips a beat, don't worry, your headphones aren't broken and you're not going crazy. Anyway, thanks for bearing with us if it sounds a little wonkier than you're accustomed to. This conversation was so fun, we decided to edit it and share everything that we could salvage. It's not ideal, but I can promise you the conversation is definitely still worth a listen. All right, so let's get into it. Just before the audio kicks in, we were talking about millennials. Jason was telling us about generation-defining events and a bit about my generation. Hope you enjoy.
That millennials are delaying things like committing to a career, marriage, no matter how you define it, having your first child, buying a house, all kinds of things like that are being pushed back. We call that delayed adulthood. And then we also see that millennials have a different relationship with technology. We frame it as tech dependence rather than being tech savvy, which is really interesting. And the biggest criticism of millennials, my people, is that we act entitled.
Our people.
Our people, thank you, millennials. What up? Heart. But the thing with millennials, this whole knock that we get on entitlement, what people don't realize is entitlement is basically a learned behavior. And so the irony, and I speak to a lot of baby boomer audiences, boomers are the ones who complain about us, but they actually created us. And then they're like, no, we didn't create y'all. And I'm like, oh, really? Is your millennial kid still on your car insurance? They're like, oh, yes, but we get a multi-vehicle discount. No, you don't. Don't sit here and tell me that. Or I'll be like, did you co-sign on their apartment? Did you put the down payment on their house? Are they on your phone plan? Oh, well, no. Like, this is very different historically than what other generations saw happen. For Gen Xers, I know we got a bunch of Gen Xers here. They had totally different, right? Their parents are like, come home when the lights come on, more important or this or that. It's just the better we understand each of them, the better we can create what we call generational context and see across them. So, yes, that was a very long answer to one question. And that's the whole show today, everybody.
Yeah, I partly asked it as a joke, but you just rolled with it.
You nailed it.
Had a whole thing. You mentioned clues. So I think that's a great way to frame it, these like seeing generational trends as clues. You want to say anything else about some of the other generations? We talked about millennials, but maybe boomers, Gen X, Gen Z.
Yeah, sure. We can maybe walk through the generations real quick. So when we think about Gen Z, the oldest members of Gen Z are already 28, 29-ish years old, at least in the US, some variants around the world for different reasons. We think about them, the defining event of that generation was COVID-19. We didn't really talk about that much today, but it's really important because it wasn't a day, a week, or even a year. It's a very long period of time. And what our research shows, because we led 15 studies during the COVID pandemic, was that it's had a very pronounced impact on Gen Z in ways we don't fully understand. We are seeing a lot of desire for mental health services from Gen Z, and they expect that in the workforce, which is really interesting. Gen Z tries to save money because they really want stability. What the data shows us is their savings rate is lower because inflation's been through the roof, but they're predisposed to save. So they'll have an emergency account anywhere they can put it, like $50 on Venmo. Or I was super excited. And so I was like, hey, Rye, I've got $10 cash. Here you go. And she's like, what am I going to do with that, Dad? Shove it into my phone? I was like, oh,
New
shove it right back over
to
here.
dirty money.
Yeah, she's like, because she didn't want to touch it. It was dirty, and money in hers only digital. So we see Gen Z, right? They think they're going to have to work a very long time. They believe a lot of government programs won't exist for them. They believe in universal basic income at an unprecedented level compared to others. Really neat. But sort of the big thing we see with Gen Z is that they're what we call a throwback generation. I wrote a book called Zeconomy with my wife, Dr. Denise Villa, and in the book, we study Gen Z extensively, and you really see this throwback sort of mindset, which is really wild. We could not be more excited about Gen Z. We think they bring so many great things. They're just miscast in the media. That's Gen Z. We talked about millennials already. Gen X, their generation known for being naturally skeptical, which is really interesting. They have sort of that trust but verify, as my wife loves to say. She's in Gen X. Yep, 6 years older than me, 6 years. And she's amazing, has a PhD. But when we think about Gen X, they're being pulled in different directions, which is really hard. Kids, aging parents, so much more there. They love to know about backup plans because they don't like surprises, which cracks me up. And my favorite thing about Gen X, they love one pagers. I don't know why, but they want everything on one page. Look at all the Gen Xers laughing. There's Jennifer over there laughing off screen. Yes, they love everything on one page. I have no idea who
Says
taught
the
them that.
CMO.
Yes, yeah, right. It's amazing. Gen X is the glue in the workforce. They're really the natural bridge. And we need to be talking about much more that's not talked about enough. And they're a shorter generation. Sometimes people will say to me, well, Jason, I thought a generation was every 20 years. And I'm like, well, that's actually completely made up. Right? What we're looking for is predictability by scenario, which tells us when one generation ends and another one begins. And then we have my baby boomers. So I love my boomers. There's some boomers here. Yay! Look at that boomer right there. She's like, yes, boomers. They're amazing. They have all the money. They vote. They tend to serve on all the corporate boards with me. I speak for lots of boards. It's always me and a bunch of baby boomers. Yay, boomers. Morning meetings. They're awesome. They get to work really early. I love boomers so much. Please never retire, boomers. They're incredible. And we believe they have so much to offer. So we really do want them to stay in the workforce as long as possible. And if I could just throw out, I did an interview recently on Gen Beta, who was just born. And I was asked to tell me about Gen Beta's characteristics. And I was like, well, they're 3 months old. They have yet to find their thumb. So
they cry a lot.
Great research there.
Just getting started. So how do the differences across the different generations really affect how these generations interact with financial institutions?
Oh, massive ways. Because when you think about generations and sort of how they operate in the world, it affects everything like technology. Do you expect to do everything on your mobile device? I didn't say this today because I would have probably gotten in trouble by somebody in the audience, but there's this big sort of construct out there in financial services, particularly in banking, fintech, and all that, where they say it's all about being mobile first, mobile first, mobile first. And our research shows that doesn't work because it implies there's a second. Like, oh, I couldn't get it done on my phone, so I quick whipped up a laptop. So nobody expectations because it's all they've ever known. So we have younger generations coming up expecting everything to be completely digital. By the way, including job interviews, they think it all should be digital. You have groups like Millennials and Gen X, particularly older Millennials like me, who are somewhere in the middle.
Sure.
We still want to be able to talk to a human, but we want to get as far as we can without them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you have my dad, who loves to go to the bank on Mondays to get crisp $20 bills because they should be really crisp. They don't stick together. They're not real, son. Right? And so if you think about banking, that's really hard because you're trying to serve people where you have one group that thinks eye contact is critical and another group that's only looking at their phone and doesn't want to look at you, right? And so for people that lead banks, particularly community banks, the trick is really being aware to those differences and realizing that one size fits all doesn't actually work because what works for one generation could turn off another. This is true when we think about customers or members, but also true when it comes to teamwork, right? When we think about things like onboarding and training, talent development, getting to see this as a career, all of these things shift by generation, and we need to be really aware of that. For example, the younger you are, the more we see them requesting soft skills training, public speaking, how to do well in a meeting, and what it takes to get promoted. They're very different than what we see being requested in older generations, which is really fascinating.
I'm paraphrasing poorly, but in order to feel that kind of stability, there needs to be a person to reinforce it. And I think that's probably something really important for our community financial institutions to think about because that's something that they can easily step in and be a resource for.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's this perception that Gen Z wants to do everything digital only. Mm-hmm. And what we find is in certain situations, one, in employment, that's totally not true.
Right.
What the data shows us is not having an in-person relationship really affects them, feeling engaged, connected, and most importantly, seen. Mm-hmm. I didn't talk about it today. We're going to do it on the webinars that y'all will be rolling out. When we look at strategies to drive engagement and retention with Gen Z as employees or team members, frequency of communication is massively important. And what we're seeing now is Gen Z's wanting to have more in-office experience because they want to see, oh, that's how you do that. Or maybe you'll invite me into a meeting or I'll get to meet a great customer, right? Or I'll get a new opportunity. All of those things become very hard to do in a fully remote environment. So we're seeing them increasingly choose to want to come into the workspace, which is very different. We just released a new study on this. I mean, it's wild how they're going, well, I'm not getting those skills. I'm not getting the opportunities. Right? And we're seeing now that in many cases, people that work remotely in a time when most other people are in person feel like they're not getting promoted as fast. They expect to do many more things without a human, but they still want to know there is a human that has their back. And that's what we teach these community financial institutions is you need to be able to say, we have your back.
Yeah.
And it's really, really important to message that It is not about ratings and reviews and all this other stuff that people chase, because the younger you are, the less you trust those things. They really want to know, okay, I can call Saxon if I have a problem, or I can send you a message, or whatever it is. So really, really important.
Yeah, I think Gen Z is such a fun one to watch right now. And their expectations, their instant gratification expectations are so fun to watch. My son, he's when you move money to him, he doesn't want it in 3 to 4 days. He thinks you're broke if it doesn't get there instantly. So he said, "Are you broke? I haven't received the money yet," in his little kid's wallet. So it's just a drastic difference of the instant expectation of when they want the support, it has to be now. When they want to do something, it has to be fast. Do you see that instant gratification need and drive dipping into the other generations that have gone digital only now? Or do you see it more with Gen Z still?
Much higher with Gen Z. We like to think about it, we frame it instead of instant gratification, we think of it as really short feedback loops. Because everything they're doing has a really short feedback loop, right? Whether it's feedback, whether it's anything like that, they just want that pace of communication to be really quick. So the idea that I'm going to engage with customer service and I'm going to make a request to be put in a queue, like, incredibly frustrating. Incredibly frustrating, right? We also see that Gen Z most trusts AI because they don't really know a time without it.
Sure.
And we predict the next generation after Gen Z today is being called Gen Alpha. That name will change eventually. But they won't even talk about AI in the way that we do. We talk about AI today like old people, right? AI is this new thing, and then it's going to be added into something, right?
Right.
It's the way we used to talk about the web. Remember, it'd be like www dot. Like, nobody says that anymore, right? Right? Yeah, dial up. That was really funny, right? We don't talk about it as it's a separate thing. It's just, it is, right? AI is going to be the same way. It's just going to be in everything. We won't even talk about it like it's the boogeyman out here. It's just powering all these different things. So what's cool about that is Gen Alpha won't think about AI in the way any of us do, as this separate sort of construct, which is going to be really wild and totally change how they engage with technology. I'm super excited.
So if we're thinking about, why these different generations may or may not choose a community financial institution, if we were to kind of condense any pointers, advice, anything that trends outside of like things that you've already said, I mean, what advice would you provide?
Yeah, well, maybe I'll get to do a study with CSI and find that out statistically, but I can tell you at a high level the sort of things that we'd be expecting, because we do get data from a variety of financial institutions. And really what this goes back to is most of the people that reach out to us, all these companies, really big global companies to community banks, regional financial institutions, they generally ask the same questions. How do we get more customers? How do we get them faster? How do we drive referrals? How do we increase customer satisfaction? All this sort of stuff. And what our research shows is by focusing only on more, better, faster, we miss a massive opportunity, which is what you're referring to, which is why are people not doing something, which nobody ever seems to study, but we do. We're sort of, dorks about it. And so we look at why do people not do it? As example, they may think, oh, well, that community financial institution is too small, so therefore their technology isn't good, without actually verifying that. What we see, particularly with Gen Z and Millennials, is they want all-in-one solutions. Yeah. They want everything to just work together. And you heard me talk about this, how simple can you make it so it just works? We also see things, this one's a little bit unusual. People don't realize there's a perception to work with a community bank, maybe you have to be rich. Because when you think about it, usually a lot of community banks are associated with, a family or wealthier families in a local community. And there's a perception I got to have a certain amount of money in order to be able to bank there. And we want to dispel that. So all of those sorts of things, and we come up with a whole long list. But the key is, it's easier to get data about why somebody chose you because those are your customers. You can survey them. What we care deeply about are the people that didn't choose you, didn't refer their friends, family, or other members or customers, and those who were customers and who left. Because there's way more there if you can ask the questions right. And I have an advantage because I don't represent a financial institution. I don't work for one, right? So when I ask a question, I get a very different set than if, Susie, the manager, reaches out to them and everybody wants to be nice to her. Like, they tell me all the good stuff.
You mentioned referral. You shared something really interesting today in your presentation about a certain generation having somewhat of an allergic reaction to the title referral, and a lot of our folks are after deposit growth. And
so I've got to nudge or motivate me to then reach out to nudge or motivate somebody else. The problem with the term referral, because we test words, we're really into words. Words matter so much, and they have such different meanings across generations. I'll give you an example. Business casual, right? Oh, that's a terrible one. Business? What's casual? Oh, your shoes, Saxon. Right? But the idea is it's very hard, and it means something different. The word referral, when we test it with younger people, they think they're going to get paid money, so they're incentivized. They think the person who's making the referral is going to receive the money, so therefore it's not actually genuine or authentic, right? You're being paid in some way to do it.
They think it's a pyramid scheme.
Yeah, well, they just think like, you're going to get $10 in your account. I'm going to get $10 in my account. There's nothing genuine about this at all. So we tested a bunch of alternatives, and what we found worked the best, if you want to get a referral, is to instead say this phrase or ask this question, which is, do you have any friends I can help? So if a banker says that, people, oh yeah, I really want to help my friends. But if you ask, do you have any referrals? Or my favorite, they'll be like, oh, the greatest compliment is a referral. Like, what's funny, I grew up in the country. A referral when I grew up meant you got spanked. You're sent to the office and you're getting licks, right? It's very different that, so all of these words mean something. And the more we could sort of be attuned to those meanings, the more we could say, okay, in this scenario, this is the appropriate word to use. That's all we're trying to do.
Got it.
That's a great question. I'll ask such good questions.
Hard-hitting questions here on Banking on Community. I think
We are celebrating our
huge.
60th year in business.
Strong generational statement right there. That's very strong. I love
Big
it.
Diamond Jubilee celebration tomorrow night.
Woo!
Sparkles everywhere.
Love that. Nothing generational like a Diamond Jubilee. Okay. We're so glad you're with us today. It's been amazing being with you. Y'all are incredible. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for
Thank you,
being with
everybody.
us. Bye, everybody.